old names cropping up and some new faces as well. So hello again to those of you who've been part of the task force in the past, and welcome to those who are newly with us. Very pleased to welcome today Dr. Liz Goodwin for RAP, the Waste and Resource Action Programme. I think in many of our discussions over the last few years, both when we meet and in these web sessions, a real recurring theme is about the need for greater collaboration of industries and across sectors. And RAP really, I think, are a primary catalyst and convener in making that collaboration happen. Bring together those groups of people in forums like this task force and others, where we might not usually work together, actually coming together to adopt a really robust and evidence-based approach to the market failures that we see right around the resource loop. And perhaps perspective, I think, as Liz will talk about a little bit, particularly at how we can reinvent the way that we design, produce and sell products, rethink how we use and consume those products, and redefine what's possible through reuse and recycling. I'm really pleased to welcome Liz today. Liz is up that we do kind of half and half presentation and Q&A, so we really use the opportunity of having the various perspectives among the task force to have a discussion for the second half of the hour. Please send any questions through. You'll see a chat function which should appear to the right of your screen. You can send any questions through to Lucas, who's our host for the session, and we'll feed the questions through to me, and I will put them to Liz as we go. So without further ado, Liz, let me hand it to you.
Great, thank you very much, and hello everyone. It's great to be able to talk to you today, and as we said, I'd like to sort of split time up so we actually get the most time for discussion as well as you just hearing from me. I've been a very keen follower of the task force speaker series, so I'm delighted to be asked to take part in this session. For those who may not know RAP, our vision is a world where resources are used sustainably. It works in partnership with governments, businesses, trade bodies, local authorities, communities and individuals to help them meet the resource challenges of the future. And we meet those challenges by reinventing how we design, produce and sell products, rethinking how we use and consume products, and defining what's possible through reuse and recycling. Challenging the status quo and challenging business as usual. If a way of doing things was a good idea in the past, doesn't it always will be a good idea forever? So now a story with you to illustrate my point. It's all about the tortoise and the hare. And against the odds, the tortoise beats the hare in a race. And you have to hand it to the tortoise. They really are resourceful creatures. Tortoise generally
a moment. We seem to have lost the audio from Liz, but we will work to get it back as soon as we can.
Longer meets the needs for the 21st century. I saw a story recently of how cars have become an issue for tortoises. It's America, which shows that people would deliberately try to run over tortoises with them in the road. Why not do this is a mystery to me, but what's clear is that the defence mechanism that was designed to keep out past predators is ineffective to today's. And that's a 21st century problem. Geographic stated that North American snowshoe hares need tools to cope with climate change and today's predators. You see, hares change coat colour with the seasons, to blend in with their surroundings. So in respect to see or not see, I should say, a white hare to blend with the snow. And brown, they will their fur to change to a muddy brown to blend when the snow melts away. And this for years. That due to climate change, The snowshoe hare can no longer rely on winter snowfall to blend. Geographic put it, bleat on a brown background of dirt and leaves. They might as well be wearing an eat me sign for lynx and other predators. The tortoise and the hare find themselves once again in a race. The race for survival is the hare, is that scientists have some confidence that they can evolve to meet their new climatic objectives. They may get one over on the tortoise. So what's telling you this story? It's because race for survival applies to us all and how we do business. But my word for it, think about examples of businesses we all know about. Businesses that didn't respond to the change in the marketplace or to their own predators. I call brands that were successful a decade or so ago, which are struggling, or worse, out of business. Getting cars to go to our local Blockbuster or other video store to choose a movie to take home and watch. We wait patiently in a queue at our local bookstore for the latest novel. It was the way we did things. It was a model that worked. So what happens? And we fall out of love with this way of doing things. It just become outdated or irrelevant by chance. An opportunity and offered something new. Something for the consumer. Now don't need to go somewhere to access films and books. They don't drive, queue, or even get dressed if they don't want to. Because books are now brought direct to them wherever they may be, whether it's a physical product or a digital version. Innovative providers did so by offering this service at no extra cost, and sometimes even cheaper than previous way of doing things. Customers now had an option that saved time, money, and effort without getting the same product as before. And traditional business models had no chance of competing with this type of service. And it does also that changes the market. Take Airbnb, which supports the rental of space to private travellers, whether a whole house or just a room. I've used them a few times, usually when we've holidayed abroad. Used have always been very different from a standard bed and breakfast. They're often who basically have a spare room, as though you're part of the family. This was for us last New Year's Eve at an Airbnb we stayed at in France in the afternoon, and our hosts were very worried because it was New Year's Eve and they didn't know of any restaurants that was open with availability for us to go to. And we were quite relaxed about the whole thing and said not to worry. But they insisted that we joined their gathering of family and friends, being part of their New Year's Eve party. We met lots of interesting people, and we will never forget that experience. We're sure that most of us forget most of the hotels that we stay in the moment we leave them. New, innovative, which the customer at its heart, at the heart of the business model, will be successful. It's unusual and tried and tested approaches to something different and compelling to the consumer. Three types of people: those who happen, those who watch things happen, and wondered what happened. For those to make things happen, RAP can help with that journey, because RAP is at the forefront of the circular economy. We're about challenging the make, use, throw, make another culture, because it is outdated and unsustainable. We're about to reinvent how they design, produce and sell products. Help think how they use and consume products, and find what's possible through reuse and recycling. Action. Because when people talk about the circular economy, RAP getting on with helping to deliver it, and it's what sets us apart. RAP for history of action, with electricals, food or clothing textiles. RAP is a track record of success. to all our work that is tried and tested. We mark failures and where this could be improved. We versions up with hard and robust evidence, so that provides us with the base on which to act. And we define where to focus in terms of tackling the problem, the market, or the process that could be improved. Determine the approach to tackle that situation, and implement tools to help tackle the situation. It's known for doing. We did recycling. When it was set up in 2000, our original objective was to help recycling take off in the UK and market for recycled materials. The usage rate was faster in the first decade of the millennium than any other country in Europe. In 2001, we were recycling just 12% of our household waste. By 2013, it was 44%. Plastic bottles as one example. Were instrumental in turning the problem of plastic waste into a new industry. A decade ago, there was no infrastructure for dealing with discarded plastic in the UK. In 2004, we launched our hugely successful Recycle Now campaign, which encourages people to recycle household waste. It's synonymous with driving positive changes to recycling behaviour. Each young people visit our Recycle Now website and ideas to increase recycling. We did so too with food waste. RAP put the issue of food waste back with our groundbreaking research, the food waste. The reason how much food was being wasted, why it was wasted, how much of it was avoidable, and how much that waste cost. The figures. Our research shows that we in the UK wasted 8.3 million tonnes of food and drink every year. It cost us over £12 billion and it's for 5% of the UK's water footprint. Wrapping at the very heart of the action on reducing household food waste. In every area of food waste post-farm gate. With retailers, the hospitality sector, and working with consumers. And then from our research, empowered industry, it's confidence to make decisions on what areas to focus on to meaningful reduction. Through forging strong collaboration. And as an example, a agreement that's brought together governments, retailers, and brands to tackle household food waste in a way not seen before. In just as told, the grocery sector delivered a 1.7 million tonne reduction in waste. That's £3.1 billion. The Love Food Hate Waste is a part of our work and has led the way. Our partners find its high profile and insights behind it invaluable in building their own campaigns. So retailer taking that messaging from Love Food Hate Waste and using it in its own branding. It's a platform to inform, engage with consumers on how best to avoid food waste. Like the campaign, Love Food Hate Waste website attracts over 1 million visitors a year. But we just rely on people coming to us. Hate waste, we bring our messages to consumers. When Cities campaign, which allows us to bring messages to the streets, or our app, which is to bring our messages to people's fingertips. RAP's work has helped reduce the amount of food we waste by 20%. Actions to tackle the amount of clothes that are thrown away needlessly. Research shows that more than half of the items we dispose of have half of their useful life left in them. Hold clothing worth a staggering £30 billion that hasn't been used for more than a year. Shining a light on the issue and getting businesses on board to help remedy the situation. We've got businesses together under a voluntary agreement, an agreement that's called the Sustainable Clothing Action Plan, the SCAP. And to the 2020 commitment has 72 signatories and supporters. And this retailer is responsible for putting 45% of clothing on market by volume and value. To achieve a 15% reduction in carbon footprint, water footprint, and waste to landfill. 3.5% reduction in waste arising over the whole product life cycle. Of course, we launched the Electrical and Electronic Equipment Sustainability Action Plan, or even for short. It's a pretty complicated name otherwise. And again, because research found that we need to make better use of the products we have and them better. Such as LG, Microsoft, and Dell have signed up to ESAP and got 5 themes. Security, building on RAP's better appliance guidance, leading product returns, influencing consumer behaviour on product durability and repairability, resilient and resource-efficient business models, and gain greater value from reuse and recycling. So, but what next? Well, it's not about the need for businesses to rethink how they do business. And we at RAP are no different. We realise that as a business, we can't just rely on the old way of doing things. We need to adapt to the environment we operate in and seek new ways of doing business, new ways of working, and avenues of funding. Underway with our recent move to charitable status is important because it allows us to be more agile, able to new opportunities, and they're better able to deliver on the priority resource areas. Deliver the circular economy is very much a priority area for RAP. Recently, in partnership with Green Alliance in the UK, with the scale of opportunities available to the UK circular economy. Just about large and impressive sounding numbers. So of those two. Isn't that? It gives real insight into the type of jobs that could be created, the skills that are needed, and in the UK where those jobs could be created. The circular economy can help address regional imbalances in unemployment, how for high employment groups, such low skills, and help offset the expected decline in some level of occupation. It shows how we can create over 200,000 jobs and employment by over 50,000. And that's in the UK. So economic argument for change. But there is two. This speaks about young global leaders, and whenever we need these leaders, because the young that have the most at stake, most win and the most to lose. Let me give you numbers to think about. My team, I'm 54. Like most of you listening today, we are fortunate to live a Western standard of living. But when he's my age, he won't be able to. 50, when Jeff is 54, it's a very different world. A population of over 9 billion. Over 3 billion people, 40% of today's global population, would be the fastest. Comes an increase in consumption, as in the last few decades in the West. We'll need 60% more food to supply this demand, but that we face risks to the security of supply. We face challenges to water and energy needs, and the threat of unrest. We fight to get hold of resources. Then there's utter chaos and conflict. It's for Jack, and you don't want it for your loved ones either. We'll find effort to make a difference. All of the individual pieces of the jigsaw. So about thinking about your competitors, operators, and can help by being there as the honest broker. You've heard this before with Courtauld, GAP and ESAP. We're all in this together. It is a collective race. Like tortoise and the hare, come with each other is the least of our worries. They win a much bigger race. The women win together, and it will take great leadership from the leaders of the future. So I ask myself, what you will play in making that happen. Thank you.
Liz, thank you very much for
now I'm very happy to take any questions.
Lee had a couple of issues with the audio there, but let me just check that you can hear me. It's possible there was an issue with the audio, I think, on Liz's end. So let Lucas try and reconnect Liz so we can both hear Liz and she can hear us. Let me quickly everyone know about a couple of things coming up. Be aware the Circulars Awards Programme, which we ran for the first time this year, will also be coming up for 2016. And nominations and entries are now invited for the 2016 programme in 8 categories, I believe, including the People's Choice Award, which has an early deadline this year. So if you're looking at the People's Choice Award, I think are in by the 1st of August. For the other 7 categories, including circular economy leadership, multinationals, investors, and for government, cities and regions, among others. Then the deadline for January will be in the autumn. You can see all the latest on the circulars at thecirculars.org on the website. And I encourage you to have a look at that. I think it was a great thing this year, which really raised awareness around the circular economy, enabled us to recognise pioneers from everything from multinationals and multinational business leaders through to kind of smaller disruptive innovators. If you have nominations either from your own companies you worked with, or the companies that perhaps you buy from or you're involved with, then do look at the website thecirculars.org. And the next in speaker series will be John Gardner, who is the Vice President and the Chief Sustainability Officer at Novellis. Lucas will send through details of that in the coming days, but that's July the 14th. So July 14th for the next in the speaker series with John Gardner, Chief Sustainability Officer at Novellis. So I am hoping and looking to Lucas for a nod that we may have Liz back with us.
Actually, no, I'm trying to get a hold of her, but I'm afraid she might not hear it.
Okay, let me leave that with you then. Let me encourage then, perhaps if we could, while we're waiting for Liz.
Dropped out.
Did they hear me? Did they hear that?
It's she. No, they can't assume you can hear us. No, it's
So bear with us, and we had a problem earlier where Liz, we could hear her, but she couldn't hear us. So apologies for that. But perhaps for those of you on the call, and you can unmute yourself if you go to the audio panel at the top left of the meeting center on your screen. I encourage really to ask any questions, and let's have an open discussion while waiting for Liz. Perhaps let me ask a question to the floor. I mean, thinking from your own experience and from your own organisations, what are the barriers that you see to business adopting circular economy principles? And I think I heard from Liz about the challenges of collaboration and working together, and saw some examples from RAP about how they're bringing together people that would necessarily always work together. Perhaps I can invite some open reflections on what are the barriers to advances in the circular economy. And just from if you're joined by the computer audio, you can go to audio and audio connection at the top left of your screen, and that will allow you to unmute yourself. You can point or ask any questions directly.
I've just spoken to Liz, and she's just joining back the call, so it's just going to take 1 or 2 minutes stops.
Thanks, Liz. So we will hang on for Liz. And in the meantime, if you have any questions for Liz, do send them through. At the top of your meeting centre, you'll see an option to add the chat panel. If you don't already see that, you can send any questions through to Liz.
I'm back again. I think we've dropped out.
Very good. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Very good. So sorry about the technical hitches, but we have you back, and we could actually we could hear you throughout the presentation, even if you couldn't hear us come the end. So thank you very much for that. I think it's sparked certainly for me some really big thoughts about how inclusion particularly, but also the kind of evidence-based campaigns that you've run. So based on research, and you talked about the food waste and showed that front page there that actually really makes these issues real for people, and show how that can galvanise action, and particularly organisations like WRAP playing the role of the honest broker there. I can be selfish and bag the first question for myself. You gave us some examples about where you've seen progress in working with business. If you're the other side of the coin, what are the kind of key barriers that you see from businesses moving towards and adopting circular economy principles? Everything from attitudes to policy to the economics of business. What are some of those key barriers, and how are you helping business to get over those?
Quite a complex mix, and it's not different every single business. For example, there's something about awareness, not actually seeing the benefits. Something about the fact that people are very busy. They're doing their day job. They're okay at the moment. They're looking far enough ahead to actually see that their business model might become obsolete. Sometimes they need to persuade other people. So we go in and we work closely with the CSR team, for example, or the part of the organisation, and they go to talk to the CEO, and the CFO is on a completely different page, and so you need to actually develop this case that will talk to all parts of the organisation and help them through that process. And also some of the changes can be some are very small, some of them are quite subtle and actually require you to work with the whole of your supply chain, and then becomes more complicated still, and you then got all the risks of changing your supply chain. So I think it's complicated.
It's an interesting point you make about having the responsibility in different parts of the organisation. I think one of the things that we see with clients, but also if I reflect personally on one of the big research efforts we've led in the last 5 years is the CEO study on sustainability with the UN Global Compact. And one of the things that I think we've really seen there is that the beer about have a part of your business signed up to it, whether that's the leadership, whether that's the sustainability function, but a question of really infusing that across the business, which becomes a real challenge.
Yes, I agree.
So, down the questions that we've got coming in. Question: how important do you think policy is in advancing the circular economy? So we look, at the European Commission package, for example, also other national and regional government initiatives. How important is that policy landscape?
I think up to a certain point, it can provide the framework and it can provide some enablers. At the end of the day, it's the business who have to make the change. So I think, it can help, but you can an awful lot without the policy framework. And I think some of the forward-thinking businesses are sort of almost ignoring the policy framework, and they're just thinking, what do we need to do for our business for the next 20, 50 years?
Seriously, well, I think one of the things, if I reflect on went to the climate summit, the business climate summit in Paris a couple of weeks ago, which really intended, I think, to be a galvanizing force for business, almost saying, I think, exactly that, that a business is saying, almost being forced to ignore policy and simply focus on what works for our business and our industry. And what we've almost got now is leaders saying, the lack of clarity is now holding us back in the investment. We've made the business case, but what we need is governments now to step in and be much more clear and coherent about the direction of policy. Is that in the areas you're working in?
And I've also had feedback from some businesses that say that one of the nice things about working with RAP over the last 10, 15 years is that I've had the same message. We have always been saying the same sort of thing, whereas governments tend to come and go every 4 or 5 years, and you see shifts and changes and differences, and it can be quite disruptive for a business trying to do things in that context.
So looking here, so there's a question here about the role of consumer behaviour change. So I guess if governments and policymakers are outside of the stakeholder coin, that's consumers the other. You mentioned the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign, which has always been, to my mind, one of the real kind of examples of real cut-through and real success on a consumer campaign on these issues. What do you see consumer behaviour change playing in as we talk about circular economy?
There are probably some examples where it is less important. There are some, the large number of things. It is very important that there's consumer demand. But our businesses can help consumers to understand and get consumers demand what is a better business model. But certainly the reason that the retailers have been so engaged with us on food waste is because the consumers have been demanding it.
It's one of those things that always, it seems to come and go in fashion for me. It seems to be one of those things that for a couple of years we talk about, we need the consumer to drive this change, to demand it of the retailers. And then we seem to go through a phase of saying, actually, almost like the policy, that we need to show consumers instead and lead them in a different direction around consuming in different ways. I mean, is that a shift that you see going in one direction, or is it really kind of ricocheting between the two?
I think it probably ricochets between the two. I mean, we and as part of the work on the electricals, we know a lot that consumers want product durability. They want products to last longer. And very important feedback that then fits into the electricals organisations, and they need to think about how they meet that. But equally, the consumer can be a bit flippant and they don't or fickle, and they don't want to actually pay any more to have a more durable product. It sort of does go one and come back the other way. But we've also had quite a lot of feedback from consumers that to the effect that this is too complicated, and they want to be the best products, and they want the problems to be solved for them, so that in a way it's a sort of form of nudge, isn't it, where you sort of the best products are no longer available. So they're expecting the good companies that they trust and the good brands that they trust that give the best products rather than something that they would be embarrassed to have.
I think of trust is really interesting. I remember a consumer study we ran a couple of years ago, and I think one of the headlines from that was that you had consumers who were concerned about sustainability and the environmental and social impact of the products that they bought and consumed, but did have to consider that when they made their purchases, and really saw it as non-negotiable parts of trusting a brand. That actually, if this is the brand for me and this is something that I trust and believe in and buy regularly, then I'll be thinking about sustainability so I don't have to almost.
That's right. And also they think, oh, it's too complicated. People are telling me all the time about carbon emissions and water and ethics and import overseas and all these complicated issues. How do I know what's the best thing to do? I need my retailer, my brand, to go through all that mirror complex information and give me the best answer.
I guess a follow-up for me on that is, what in your experience really resonates with consumers? I mean, one of the things we found is that the more you could make the impact that you communicated of the products and services that you sell local and tangible and personal. So not saying, buying this product will contribute to a 0.5% drop in total emissions for Europe, but that it'll improve air quality or water quality in your area, or it'll bring jobs to your local area. The more the companies can make that local and tangible, the more its sustainability really connected with consumers.
Right, I think making it relevant and meaningful, because who knows what 5% of a very big number is. Making it meaningful, translating it into hours of your television or whatever it might be. But I think there's also a sort of I didn't realise that type of thing as well that can engage consumers. Certainly, we found that with recycling. They're fascinated by people are fascinated by what you can do with recycled materials. They expect everything goes into some sort of park bench, but actually, when things can be, they can see that actually can go back into some very valuable product. So that's a sort of wow that engages them. And one of the reasons that Love Food Hate Waste has been so successful is because we've been able to demonstrate to consumers they'll save money. Especially at a time when the economic conditions were quite difficult, being able to say, do you realise you're wasting, your family is wasting £60 a month on waste? If you use some of these simple tips, you can reduce that.
Yeah, it's very powerful. There's a question here which I think relates to that, and looking at the kind of the personal benefits as well as the kind of wider shared benefits. I think, does RAP help the UK economy to embrace access over ownership and business models like product as a service and renting, hiring, loan rather than ownership?
Yeah, we've actually got a project that we're doing which is funded by the European Union called Rebus, which is actually about piloting a number of different business models. So working with a whole range of different types of businesses to help them to pilot different approaches, which include things like return schemes, leasing, a whole range of different sort of rather than asset-rich business models. So we are in that space. It's one of those really challenging ones though, because that is often about redesigning the way business works, and that feels quite a risky activity for a lot of businesses to undertake.
What kind of levels and functions within organisations conversations are happening? I mean, are they still happening within dedicated sustainability teams, if you like, or is it starting to become more embedded in the product design, supply chain, and kind of top leadership as well?
It's a mixture, to be honest. There are some organisations that have really moved away from having a separate sustainability team, and it's embedded in the whole organisation. We work at a range of different levels. It'll be sort of head teams, so reasonably senior, but not the most senior. But at the end of the day, you still need the board to sign it off. So we're generally helping them to go through some board sign-off process. But actually, we do make sure that it's really bought into by the senior team, and then it's built into the plans as a business, so it's not just seen as an add-on.
through other questions coming in. On RAP's on-farm anaerobic digestion fund, asking how this works, where the funding comes from, and how farms qualify, and maybe give us a bit of background on the fund as well.
This is a slightly mainstream. It's some fund that we got from DEFRA and from DEC, and it's got components to it. The first bit is a small grant, so you can get a small grant. I think it's about £10,000 or £20,000 to do a feasibility study to look at the feasibility of on-farm AD. If you feel that you've generated a good case, you come back and apply for a loan. So the second part of the scheme that is a loan that is designed to help you to actually implement that project that you thought about. But it's basically to encourage farmers to think about using AD, and it's a way of helping through that process of evaluating whether or not there is a case, and then finally getting investment.
Thank you. And last question here, we've got a few people, which is always very gratifying, joining from our industry and sustainability teams at Accenture. And I've got a question here from one of the strategy consultants, asking how does the circular economy and circular economy principles apply to professional service providers like Accenture? Aside from being something that we help our clients with, how can we become more circular ourselves?
The mental one is that you're working very closely with all sorts of other businesses, and so having a really good understanding is really important, because you're the ones who are going to be able to help these other businesses implement things. There are things you can do yourselves to think about your resource use, but I think the biggest impact you're going to have are going to be the way in which you influence the people you work with.
Excellent. So, a couple feelers, if I may. I think one of the things that we're always interested in, and I think while you were rejoining, we were just talking about the circular awards that we ran for the first time next year. Ran for the first time this year. Will be run again for 2016 and presented in Davos in January. So one of the things that I think really helps people to get into a deep understanding of the principles is to look at those companies and those business leaders who are really making a success of the circular economy, and so really having an impact not only on what we call sustainability metrics, so an impact on waste, on water, etc., also serving the interests of the business as well. We need to pick out perhaps a couple of examples, either of big multinational companies or the smaller disruptive innovators who are really blazing that trail and showing how companies can find that combination of sustainability and business success. We have a couple of those in mind that could be of interest for us to look into.
There are lots, but I mean the obvious names stand out. It would be the Unilevers and the King, the ones who everybody knows about in terms of big ones. But and they're doing some fundamental stuff really in terms of designing the way their businesses think and work. But there are lots of smaller ones. Sort of people with clothes and bags renting rather than people doing things. So you can rent a dinner bag for the evening. Things like that. So I mean, I think there are lots of people doing it in their own way. But I think there's some exciting stuff going on. It's just how do we make more of it and get it more mainstream. That's the thing that worries. We've been talking about the same names into big corporates for a number of years now.
It's something I was talking about with someone I think yesterday, saying in the last thinking about 7 or 8 years that we've been working on the CEO study with the Global Compact, one of the things that keeps jumping out at us is that the same companies come out as the example, you mentioned M&S, you mentioned Unilever, and it's how we find that kind of the broad base of innovation, I guess, in these areas. And a lot of it is coming from the smaller players that you mentioned, actually not into read the oil tanker and find huge different ways of running a multi-million-dollar business, but actually smaller players who can come into a market and look at it afresh. People, world's largest accommodation provider now owns no real estate. Alibaba, of course, holds no inventory. So it's those smaller players who can come in and I think afresh.
Yeah, great.
Here, asking. I mean, you talked about the need for collaboration, working across boundaries and traditional kind of sector silos. Are there any strong examples that you can see of public-private partnerships to advance the circular economy?
The obvious one is really thinking about. It probably feels like a trivial example, but packaging. The choice of the packaging material that is made by the retailer or by the supply chain ends up as being something that the local authority has to handle, and so therefore actions taken by the retailer has an impact on the local authority. The local authority on their own feels as though they don't have very much control over it. They're just sort of there to take whatever comes out. But you can see the same thing back the other way as well. The infrastructure that the local authority puts in place has an impact on the retailer, and the consumer feels about packaging. So getting those groups together to understand the problem is quite tricky. And certainly we started working on plastic recycling. We had the retailers and the local authorities hadn't really sat in the same room together. We got them to talk to them. They found out things that they didn't really understand before and they didn't realise before. But even just going down supply chains, the end people down the supply chain often speak to each other because they're too separate they're too far apart in the supply chain.
Those honest brokers between the two who can.
Yeah.
We've got one more question here, and just conscious of time, so any more questions, please do send them through. The question is, new models and these disruptive players like Uber, like Airbnb, being valued at billions without any assets to speak of. How sustainable are these long-term, asks our questioner, looking in terms of not just environmental sustainability, but financial, social, ethical.
Probably not very qualified to comment. I mean, I think that they have a degree of sustainability in the fact that there was a transactions taking place. So just because something doesn't have physical assets, I don't think is a reason to say it doesn't have value. Keeping a constant eye on what's happening and evolving and growing as the world changes, because they came in and were disruptive, so will be coming in and being disruptive all the time. So they need to stay ahead of the game. Airbnb needs to keep looking at its model and making sure that it is still current and that it isn't something else they could do which would move it on to the next stage.
So it's a question we could probably do an entire series on, actually. So we can put it down for the next 6 months of sessions. But I guess I'm going to take advantage of having the microphone and ask you a couple of last questions, Des, if I may. If you look back, I think you've been for around about 7 or 8 years now. Is that right?
Yeah.
If over that time, what would you count as kind of RAP's biggest success?
It would have to be food waste on the map and sort of and then getting food waste working and getting food reductions in the UK by 20%, avoidable food waste. I think that was a fundamental piece of work, and it's that we're best known for. So that to be thing that stands out in my mind.
And day to day, and this may be a trickier one, but day to day, what's your biggest frustration working in this area?
There's so much to do, and we haven't got enough time and people to do it all. The food waste example is a great one, because on a basis, I get contacted by the countries overseas saying, "One, how do you do it? We'd like to learn from you." We have the resources to be able to spread word. Yet there is some fantastic learning, which really is applicable in lots of other parts of the world. And so, frustration for me is that we can't. There's so much to do, and we haven't got enough time and people to do it.
Then a related question as a last one from me. You look ahead to 2020, for example, and I realize we all started using Vision 2020 when it was in the kind of 10 to 15 year time horizon, and it seemed a long way away and is now almost tomorrow. But if you look ahead to 2020 for RAP, what would success look like for you?
I like to think that we look far more holistically at the whole environmental impact of products, a range of products, not just food, but also electricals and textiles, and that we'd actually got electricals and textiles into a similar place as we've got food, where there's a really good business case for products that last longer, that can be repaired, so that we go out as consumers. If a washing it breaks down, you get it repaired, and you can probably get it repaired that day, and it's not going to be, you're not going to just be given the option of, will it be easier if you just buy a new one. I think that's just something we shouldn't be finding acceptable in 5 years' time. Very good.
So we can, with the timely reminder that Vision 2020 is now just 5 years away. I think that's a good ambition to set. Well, Liz, look, thank you very much for the time, for the presentation, and for taking so many questions as well. I appreciate that. And I said at the outset, we talk a lot, I think, in these sessions and in our own work as well, about, the need for greater collaboration and bringing public and private sectors together, bringing competitors together, and also bringing companies together from industries and sectors as well. But I think actually real examples of that working are relatively thinner on the ground than the amount of time we devote to saying we need it. So it's been great, I think, from my perspective, and I'm sure from everyone on the call, to hear about those examples from RAP where actually that's happened very successfully. Where that collaboration and evidence-based campaigns can really galvanise action and make the case around the circular economy and lead to really kind of tangible results from business, governments, from policymakers, can start to build that public awareness and demand as well. I mentioned the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign, and I think me I to hear you pick it up as a kind of real achievement, because that stands for me as a great example of something that's really galvanised that demand. Therefore, the time and attention and resources from business and governments as well. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed some of the questions that we've had to put to you, even if we're asking you to analyse the business models of Uber and Airbnb in 5 minutes. But say maybe that's the one for the next session. So thank you very much.
Not at all, and thank you for the opportunity. And it is always good to hear people's perspectives and the questions, because it just makes you just stop and think a little bit about what you're doing.
Very good. Well, thank you, and let me close with 2 reminders. One is that the entries for the circulars, as I say, for 2016 are now open, and you can see the call for entries and the categories in which we're inviting either from your own organisations or others that you know and would like to nominate at thecirculars.org. And a reminder that the next session in our speaker series is Gardner, who is the Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at Novelis. That will be coming within the next couple of weeks, but if you want to hold your diaries now, that'll be July the 14th is Gardner from Novelis. So without further ado, I will you to go and enjoy the rest of your day. Once again, say a big thank you to Liz Goodwin.